I'm going to share with you an incredible story of when Ava Gardner had to intervene and save the life of Debbie Reynolds' daughter in the most desperate situation. I stumbled upon a little treasure in Debbie Reynolds' autobiography. It's a story that tugged at my heartstrings. I couldn't resist sharing it with you, my wonderful subscribers, expecting it to be as surprising for you as it was for me. Before I dive into the middle, let's set the stage for the story, because I really want you to imagine how the whole thing happened. Imagine slipping into the shoes of those in the spotlight, or better yet, take a moment to embrace the spirit of Debbie Reynolds. Oh wait, before we dive deep, sign up for our newsletter now. Don't miss a single vintage tale. Link in the description. Okay, now we can start. Ready? Let's unwind and enjoy the story. In May 1984, Debbie Reynolds tied the knot for the third time. Like her first two husbands, Richard popped the question soon after they met, but she played it cool. Back in her early days at MGM, she crossed paths with the dashing man who happened to be the biggest recording star of the 1950s, Eddie Fisher. He found success in both records and the emerging realm of television with his show Coke Time with Eddie Fisher. The media dubbed them America's Sweethearts when they got hitched. Eddie was her initial love, and also her inaugural divorce. Back in the day, Eddie's friend, the movie producer Mike Todd, was a frequent guest in Debbie Reynolds' life during her courtship with Eddie. Love had its own plans, and Mike found himself smitten with none other than Elizabeth Taylor. When Mike and Elizabeth decided to tie the knot, Eddie and Debbie stood by their side. But tragedy struck. Mike had a fatal plane crash, leading to a chaotic time where Debbie took care of their children while Eddie supported Elizabeth. It was amidst this storm that Eddie made the heart-wrenching choice to bid adieu to Debbie and their little ones for Elizabeth Taylor. Admit it, you saw this twist in the tale coming, right? The scandal echoed across the globe, and people still whisper about it by the fireside. In her second marriage, Debbie Reynolds became involved with Harry Carl, a wealthy businessman from a family that owned a chain of lucrative shoe stores. Despite the age difference, Harry persistently courted Debbie until she agreed to marry him. Their union brought stability and a family life that lasted for many years. In the domestic realm, Debbie managed their home and attended to Harry's wardrobe, while he took charge of their business affairs. However, beneath the surface, trouble brewed. Harry's fervour for gambling surpassed his commitment to Debbie and their family. His financial recklessness led to the depletion of both his and Debbie's fortunes. The discovery of their financial troubles 13 years into their marriage led to the breakdown of their once stable life. When Richard popped the question, it had been a whopping 26 years since Eddie Fisher left Debbie for Elizabeth Taylor back in 1958. That felt like ancient history. The whole mess of her second marriage had wrapped up a solid decade ago, and after being a rich man's trophy wife, she wore off the whole marriage gig. Putting in the hard work to pay off Harry's mountain of gambling debts, she rebuilt her life. At 52, she wasn't keen on spending the rest of her days solo, scared of taking another shot at love. Though she'd only known Richard for less than a year, saying yes to him just felt right. They clicked like kindred spirits, comfortable in each other's company. Hours of conversation breezed by like mere minutes. Love had found its way back into her life, and she was happy about it. So a few months after Richard popped the question, Debbie thought, why not, and decided to take the plunge and marry him. You know, just to be on the safe side, she was pretty stoked when Ruta Lee handed her a copy of her prenuptial agreement. Classic Ruta, always prepared. But hey, it's Hollywood, right? Debbie and Ruta go way back, all the way to the early days at MGM. Ruta even played one of the 7 brides for 7 brothers in the musical of the same name. Good times, good times. So, after all the twists and turns, Ruta suggested to Debbie, why not make sure you won't get hurt again? Richard, being the good sport, read the prenup for a few hours and signed it, a gesture to prove his love for her beyond the zeros in her bank account. Now, Debbie had a gig lined up on a cruise leaving from Miami for a week in May. Seemed like the perfect time for a wedding and honeymoon combo, right? A small affair, just close friends and family making waves in Florida and setting sail for a sea-soaked celebration, just the way Debbie liked it, working her magic on stage and Richard soaking in the show. As the big day approached, with family and friends flying in, Debbie and Richard found themselves settling into a comfortable suite at the Ambassador Hotel. A quiet, secluded Miami street became the backdrop for their intimate ceremony, hosted by their dear friends Nancy and Joe Cantor at their beautiful bayfront home. All arrangements were swiftly and discreetly handled by Debbie and Nancy, ensuring a peaceful celebration away from the prying eyes of the press. On the day before the wedding, Carrie's plane arrived from London, but she wasn't on it. In a heartfelt call, Carrie explained her inability to attend. She was going through a challenging period, having recently ended her brief marriage to Paul Simon and experiencing a tubal pregnancy followed by surgery. Carrie was facing both physical and emotional difficulties. Unfamiliar with Richard and still dealing with the scars of Debbie's second marriage, Carrie had a complex mix of emotions. Debbie received the news with disappointment and concern, knowing that Carrie was on the brink of tumultuous times, with her postcards from the Edge yet to make an appearance. The next day the air was abuzz with preparations for the ceremony. Debbie's mother, sporting a dusty pink chiffon dress, couldn't contain her excitement. Designed by Rhett Turner from Bob Mackey's studio, Debbie's seafoam green chiffon dress featured sheer sleeves and delicate crystal and pearl beading around the neckline and cuffs. With Kelly Muldoon, Debbie's hairstylist and close friend, doubling as the matron of honour, they added the final touch by affixing white blooms to Debbie's hair at the hotel before heading over to Nancy and Joe's place. Just another day in the whirlwind of wedding arrangements. On the big day, Debbie's dad, at 81 and too frail to travel, couldn't make it, so Todd, her son, happily stepped in to give her away. Todd, being just 26, had the talk with Richard, her groom, making it clear that any harm to her would have consequences. A nervous laugh from Richard followed. Before they knew it, it was time for the ceremony. In the early evening, Todd walked her down the stairs, heading out onto the terrace overlooking the bay where everyone had gathered. Her bouquet, a delicate mix of white lilies and lilies of the valley, trembled slightly in her hand from nervousness. At that moment she kept reminding herself, "I know I can do this. He loves me. Let life in." As the sun set in the cloudless sky, casting a warm glow over the scene, Debbie Reynolds casually approached Richard with the ring, making the timeless pledge to love him until death do them part. Wrestling with the ring, she bent down, giving everyone a moment of suspense. After a bit of a struggle, the ring finally found its place, sparking cheers and applause all round. The festivities continued indoors, where they raised a toast to the newlyweds, Mr. and Mrs. Hamlet. Inside, a round table showcased beautifully arranged flowers and their wedding cake. 3 tiers of a glistening white cake were sliced, and Richard playfully shoved a large piece into Debbie's mouth. Laughter erupted as some icing landed on the exposed area, just below her neck. The jovial atmosphere continued with smiles for the camera, and while Debbie put on a show, her mind wandered to thoughts of Carrie, concerned for her daughter's well-being. Debbie asked Todd to connect her with Carrie in London. Todd lightened the mood with a few jokes before handing the phone to Debbie. "Hey there, it's your mum, Debbie," she casually greeted. Debbie went on to fill Carrie in on all the happenings, expressing a bit of sadness that Carrie couldn't join. Carrie explained she had caught a nasty cold, likely aggravated by the plane trip. "Take care, dear," Debbie said. "Meet your new stepdad, Richard." Richard had a brief chat with Carrie before handing the phone back to Debbie. "Bye-bye, love. Missing you here," Debbie said with a cheery tone as she hung up. In the midst of that phone call with Carrie, there was a palpable tension in the air. Each word she spoke hinted at a deeper struggle, and as the conversation faded into an unsettling silence, the weight of the situation hung heavy. Turning to Todd, a sense of urgency led him to offer a solution, a journey to London to bring Carrie home. Yet an unspoken worry crept in, suggesting time might slip away faster than Todd could reach her. In a last-ditch effort, Debbie asked Todd to dial Carrie again. The persistent ringing amplified Debbie's apprehension. Secluded in her hotel room, Carrie's unintentional overdose on prescription medications became a haunting reality. In a moment of desperation, Debbie reached out to the hotel's concierge, seeking a lifeline amidst the uncertainty. In the late hours of the London night, a worried Debbie Reynolds found herself on the phone with a sceptical hotel concierge, desperately trying to ensure her daughter Carrie Fisher's well-being. "Hello, this is Debbie Reynolds. My daughter Carrie Fisher is staying at your hotel. I've been calling and calling, but she doesn't seem to be answering," she explained, her voice carrying a mix of urgency and concern. As the concierge expressed doubt, suggesting they couldn't confirm her identity, Debbie, undeterred, proposed a bold plan. "Would you go to Carrie's room if Ava Gardner came to the hotel and went with you?" she asked, hoping her friend could vouch for her. In the quiet moments that followed, a sense of relief washed over Debbie as the concierge agreed. "I'll handle it for sure," Ava assured when Debbie explained the situation. With a reputation for managing everyone from Frank Sinatra to bullfighters in Spain, Debbie was confident that one London concierge would be no match for Ava. After this conversation, Debbie returned to the dining room, where her wedding was unfolding without the bride. She discreetly pulled Nancy, her host, aside. "Carrie might be unwell in London," she said to her. "I need to get back to the hotel to make sure she's all right." She smiled and posed for pictures with her new husband and friends a while longer, not letting on that she was scared to death about Carrie. Then Richard and she prepared to leave. Somehow the press had found out about the wedding. Cars full of reporters and paparazzi packed the driveway and surrounded the house. All she wanted to do was to get back to the ambassador to make sure Carrie was safe. Joe called his friend at the sheriff's station to clear a way for them, then drove the short distance so fast that the car wheels barely touched the pavement. It seemed like they were flying through every back alley, and each minute felt like an eternity. The hotel lobby turned into a media frenzy. Eager to escape the madness, Debbie and Richard hightailed it to their suite, where the night unfolded with a series of laid-back phone calls to Ava in London. Ava, being the rock-solid friend she was, swiftly made her way to the St. James Hotel. Upon stepping into Carrie's room with the hotel manager, they found her snoozing on the floor, fully decked out in clothes shoes. The room had a cool breeze from the open windows and a soft hum from the television. That was the scene. Imagine walking into that London hotel room. Now think about being Ava Gardner, opening that door and finding Carrie in that vulnerable state. What goes through your mind? Concerned, Ava rang up a doctor for the necessary medical attention. While Carrie hadn't overdosed, she had downed more pills than advisable, probably due to the discomfort of her lingering cold. Ava stuck around until she was sure the coast was clear. In their last chat many hours later, Debbie showered Ava with gratitude for being Carrie's guardian angel. Debbie knew that words alone couldn't do justice to her appreciation, but she trusted her dear friend got the gist. Carrie geared up to head back to the States. Rather than making her way to London, Todd flew to Los Angeles and met his sister back home. Briefly, for that fleeting moment, everyone found a sense of settling. Debbie Reynolds caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Relief for her daughter's safety clashed with guilt, torn between maternal concern and the desire to immerse herself in her new marriage. The weight of wondering if their union had triggered this episode left her emotionally drained. As Richard and Debbie set sail for the cruise later that day and settled into their cabin, she succumbed to exhaustion, collapsing into a deep, dreamless sleep. Not exactly a morning person, while barely managing the afternoon, Debbie Reynolds found herself rousing after a stretched-out wedding night, and there was no sign of Richard. She slipped into her outfit and added a touch of make-up before heading out to the deck. Lo and behold, there was Richard, surrounded by 3 delightful ladies, exchanging laughter and playful banter. Tall, handsome, and utterly at ease, he stood to greet Debbie with a cheeky kiss. "Meet my friends from Roanoke," he said, introducing them. "They're hopping on the Bermuda adventure with us." "Pleasure to meet you," Debbie replied, genuinely surprised by the unexpected company. Under the bright sun, a subtle shiver ran down her spine. Sometimes storm clouds brew without notice. Little did she know her new husband was equipped with all the skills of a champion tennis player, a great racket, nimble moves, and as events would unfold, plenty of balls. Time flew during the cruise, and once Debbie sailed past those initial bumpy days, everything became smoother. The ladies from Roanoke became a distant memory, and her new husband, soaking up the sun, ended up resembling a lobster. Debbie's nursing skills weren't exactly top-notch, so she resorted to throwing wet towels on him to ease his suffering. Even with third-degree burns, the pain didn't deter him from enjoying some gambling. When it was time to check out in Florida, she couldn't ignore the hefty sum on the bill from the ship's casino. Debbie chalked it up to entertainment and his excitement as a newlywed. Back in Los Angeles, following the cruise escapade, Debbie's friend Phyllis Burkett organised a reception for Debbie and Richard. It served as an introduction for Hollywood society to get to know this new man in Debbie's life. The guest list boasted names like Gary Marshall and his wife Barbara, Florence Henderson, Pat and Tom Bosley, Patty and Dick Van Patten, and several other friends, all eager to extend their warm wishes. Choosing a dress from her most recent wedding, Debbie thought it fitting for the casual dinner gathering. Richard, having recovered from his sunburn, appeared dashing in a white jacket, although a faint hint of paleness remained. The initial part of the soiree went smoothly, filled with laughter and good vibes. However, as dinner progressed, Richard's demeanour shifted. "I'm not feeling well. I have to lie down," he said. Guiding him to a bedroom, Debbie couldn't ignore the warmth emanating from him. A swift temperature check confirmed her suspicions. Fever. She phoned the doctor, who they had to take to the hospital immediately. Down in La Jolla, a little south of L.A., there's this famous spot called Scripps, a hospital that's all about top-notch diagnostics. So Debbie snagged a car for the drive, and Richard, well, he practically melted into her during the 2-hour journey, running a fever like nobody's business. They hit the hospital that very night. Now I want you to imagine this. Back at the party, her friends had their fill of drama and took off not long after they did. I bet they were cooking up all sorts of theories about Debbie's new marital escapade. I mean, let's be real, this guy didn't exactly seem like he was cut out for the first round with her. After Richard settled in at Scripps, the doctors diagnosed him with a leaky hole in his heart. A hole in his heart? Can you imagine? He was in critical condition. Over the next day or so, he's hooked up to an IV, receiving medication to stabilise him. Debbie, being the devoted wife, stayed nearby, praying for his recovery. Luckily, Scripps had an innovative treatment that spared Richard from surgery. Debbie became a constant presence by his side, offering support day and night. Despite the rough start, this challenging experience, their bond grows stronger, and when Richard is well enough to travel, they head to his hometown in Roanoke, Virginia for his treatment. The medication works, and they stay in a beautiful mansion Richard designed. It sits on a hill, giving them stunning views of the valley. Imagine their story unfolding in this scenic setting, a tale of love and resilience. During the day, Debbie would be by Richard's side at the hospital, surrounded by his family and friends. Richard, a real estate mogul, received regular updates from the builders working on his projects. Debbie, always attentive, made sure to bring him special food, sweets, and fresh clothes from home. As she spent time in Roanoke, Debbie formed friendships with the people she had met before marriage. Richard had taken her on tours around the town, showing her the various properties he owned. Debbie's fascination with real estate dates back to her marriage to Harry Carl. She used to explore Hollywood for potential properties. However, things took a turn for the worse when her second husband took charge, and it seemed like the properties just vanished into thin air. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Debbie Reynolds found herself amidst a whirlwind of drama and chaos. She often referred to Richard as the devil, which played a significant role in the turbulence that marked her life. In an interview, she openly expressed her feelings for him, who completely ruined her financially. She wrote, "Why did he seem so intent on getting me out to the balcony, which is only about 3 feet wide, not enough room to have a friendly conversation? Was he thinking about my $1 million life insurance policy with him as a beneficiary? I could practically see the dollar signs floating above his head." Well, the tale is ready to be unveiled, packed with the most astonishing revelations. If you're eager to dive into the nitty-gritty of this extraordinary story, drop a comment below. Your interest is the key to unlocking this fascinating narrative. Let me know if you're up for it. and I might just roll out a video to spill all the captivating details. Until then, I cannot stress enough how much I recommend you watch my next video. I thought I already knew many things about Jane Russell, but my deep dive into her life uncovered something incredibly interesting. So, the topic of the next video is how Jane Russell's biggest scandal caused protests and public outrage. It covers a very unexpected story that was never really exposed in the media. Check it out.